Alright Helldivers, we're back, and today we're going to be ranking all the secondary weapons in Helldivers 2. Now this will probably be the last time I do a broad stroke, I would say, ranking video on all the factions together. I would rather probably from now on just individually talk about the factions and then rank weapons accordingly, because I do think they are varied enough to where if I'm talking about these weapons in broad strokes, you're just going to miss a lot of like nuance, and I also don't want these videos to be like, I don't know, an hour long. So I've got my Helldivers 2 controller, I've got my Liberty. Let's get started. All right, so first up we have the Peacemaker. If you look at the stats here, the Peacemaker, it looks decent, but in actual practice, I feel like this weapon has suffered from not power creep, but there have just been so many more additions to the game that do that secondary job, I would say, way better than the Peacemaker. This obviously was our first sidearm that every Helldiver gets, so it holds a little special place in my heart, and it does kind of fill that fantasy of you run out of your primary weapon, you don't have a stratagem weapon either, and then you just pull out your Peacemaker as like a last stand, and you get a couple kills before inevitably getting, torn to shreds. So it has like cool factor. I also like the mechanics with it as far as like when you reload it and then you slap in a new clip, but in practice, it's not that good. So for our tier list here, I am gonna throw it in kind of the C tier, kind of the, I would say, more niche category here. So really quick on the tier list, top pick there, S tier. That's going to be reserved for probably something in the A tier that I will put at the end of the video. I like to be very picky with my S tier picks. And then below that is the Liberty approved. This is B tier. It's like solid category. And then C tier, more niche, and then D is trash. I actually don't think we have any trash secondary weapons, but I don't know. Let's continue on. So another reason why the Peacemaker is so low is because we have almost a straight up upgrade here with the Redeemer. The Redeemer basically blows it out of the water with all the other stats. You can also switch the Redeemer to be semi-automatic instead of full auto, and again, it'll basically be a Peacemaker for you. Now I understand maybe you don't like the design of it or something like that, but as far as like the numbers and what this thing can do, yeah, poor Redeemer. When the game first came out, this thing was the S tier, the A tier pick easily. But again, we've got so many more weapons now that the Redeemer's kind of just a solid pick. Very solid at taking out light chaff, and that's its job. That's what it's designed for, and it does it well. So definitely just like solid category. So moving on, we have the Verdict. The Verdict is, when this thing came out, it was absolute ass. This thing was garbage. But now it has that medium penetration, so this gun is really good. It fills out your kit in a way where if you take just a light primary weapon, this secondary having this medium penetration with the Verdict, it feels really good. It fills out that role for you, and again, rounds out your equipment. So for me, the Verdict, it definitely goes into a solid tier. Obviously, ammo might be a little bit of a problem with it, but the medium penetration is really nice on it. I do rank this above the Redeemer. Maybe you can make an argument for it being into A tier, but for now, I'm going to keep it right here in B tier. And next up, we got the Powerhouse. We got the Senator. Man, what do you even say about the Senator here? It is super powerful. If you hold down the examine button, it'll do a little revolver flip, so it's got the cool factor as well. Now, when it got its heavy ammo penetration added to the game, everybody was freaking out about how good this thing was, and the community went a little bit wild, saying like, oh, the Senator can do so many things, it's so overpowered. But man, if you're gonna actually use the Senator to kill, I would say, heavy massive targets, it's just gonna take a lot of bullets, and it's not really worth it. It can do those things, but it's not really, I would say, viable. So in that sense, Revolver Ocelot was kind of wrong.
6 bullets, more than enough to kill anything that moves.
But there's no other secondary like the Senator, so easy A tier pick here. Now moving on to the melee weapons here, I feel like we can talk about these in broad strokes. They're all very similar. Obviously, the stun baton and the stun lance here have that stunning factor so that you can stagger targets, but the combat hatchet here, this is a store item, just the raw damage. The combat hatchet feels amazing. I can't wait till we get a saber. But when it comes to these melee weapons, it's a risk reward playstyle, and on the higher tier difficulties, that is going to be, I say, a tough pill to swallow. Like going against the bugs and the bots with melee weapons, yeah, I don't think so. I think these melee weapons are obviously more viable against the squids and taking out Boatless and Overseers. I think they do actually do a pretty good job at that. It's just those other factions, it's a little more risky, even with like pairing it with armor perks like Peak Physique or the democracy protects. So for me, all these melee weapons kind of go into the C tier. Now, I prefer the combat hatchet over these other two. I don't really care about the stagger or the stun effect. I know people love that. I can see some people being like, are you kidding me about these melee weapons? They belong in the S tier, the A tier. But no, it's just, I'm also basing this list off of what I see when I'm going into that tier 9, tier 10. And I barely see anybody bringing melee weapons. I really can't think of anybody bringing melee weapons. And I also don't see them bringing the Peacemaker as well. Not saying I don't love these melee weapons, but just in the higher tier, oof, it's going to be a little rough. And next we'll move to the special category. Now you might be noticing, hey, Mr. Nomad there, you're missing the Bushwhacker and the stim pistol. That's because this is my Steam account. I have a PlayStation account, and don't worry, I got the footage from there as well, but just, yeah, my Steam account, it's a little bit behind still. But as far as the Bushwhacker, it goes into this solid tier list. The only thing about the Bushwhacker is I wish it had fletchet shells like with the Holt. The 3 light penetration shells, they're powerful, they're good for up close, but it just, I feel like this is a weapon like a sawed-off shotgun almost, where you want to be taking out basically the big medium armor enemies as well up close. I'm thinking like biospheres and stuff like that. This would be amazing if it could just like dunk on like one of those at a time, but it can't. It sticks to light penetration, so that's why I'm ranking a little bit lower than the Redeemer. And then the stim pistol, this thing I'm putting at the very end of C tier. I see people throwing us in the trash tier, and I can't argue with that. I think the stim pistol, again, I've mentioned it before about it, but I feel like this weapon would be a lot better if it had a long duration healing effect, not as much as say when you actually do stim yourself, something a little bit less than that, but for a longer duration, I think it'd be really good. And also if you could shoot yourself with it. But where I think this thing is actually why putting in the C category is if you're on comms or mic, especially with your buddies, having this stim pistol around can be very helpful. And I have used it in the past and I have found it useful in those cases. So it's not complete garbage, but if you're always just playing with like random Helldivers with no mics and stuff like that, yeah, I would throw this straight in the bin. I don't think it's very good on its own like that. I think you do need that communication factor, or you need to like babysit Helldivers, and that's no fun either, because in this game, you do go from like 100 to 0 health a lot of the times. So it's like, what do I have this stim pistol for? But for me, I have found enough cases where I am using it and I do have a good time. So especially again with friends and over comms and stuff like that. So I am going to keep it in the C tier, which is like more like a niche tier anyways, but very, very bottom of niche tier. And then next up, we got the Crisper. This thing it's a very unique weapon. It's basically one of a kind about all the secondaries. I guess some of them are. I guess you can make that case for some of the other secondaries too. But the Crisper, like your handheld flamethrower, I think the canister is large enough to get the job done. If you pair this with the ship boost for fire damage, yeah, this is a really good secondary. I like it a lot. I'm gonna put it in A tier. But this also circles back to why I don't want to do these tier lists based on all the factions all at once, is because I think the Crisper here is really good against the bugs and the squids, but like against the bots, I wouldn't recommend this thing essentially. So I'm keeping it up there for against the bugs and the squids, really because I think it excels at those two factions. And now we get to the grenade pistol. This is one of, if not the best secondary, and that's because of how versatile it is. It does structure damage, it can kill chaff, explosive. I don't think the medium penetration on it really matters all that much. I'm going to stick it up into A tier, obviously, and I think probably above the Senator as well. Just bringing the grenade pistol really rounds out most equipment kits. For the bots, if you pair this with the thermite grenade, then you can take out fabricators and then use a thermite on a Hulk, and like that combination right there, super strong. Love the grenade pistol, easy A tier. Let's move on. And next up, we have the Las Dagger. Ugh, man, I don't like the playstyle of any of the laser guns, essentially. Well, that's not true. I like the sickle and the double sickle, but the scythe and the dagger here, not for me. That being said, I would say there are situations where this weapon feels really good, and it does set targets on fire as well. So give it brownie points for that. But if you're running away from like a bunch of shriekers, and then you just, you're running and gunning with this thing, and you just laser all of them down, that feels really satisfying. I think it belongs somewhere in B tier. It's just somewhere in the middle here. And obviously as a laser gun, if you just have a little bit of trigger discipline, this thing will never run out of ammunition. So maybe a little bit better than the Redeemer, and hell, even the Verdict. But I just like the Verdict better than the dagger. So I get why people would maybe rank this a little bit higher, but I think it's good in B tier. I think it's very solid. And next up, the ultimatum. This is why this list is coming out a little bit later, because they balanced this immediately, or I guess they nerfed this immediately after releasing it because of the just how powerful this thing is. 4,500 damage, and that's not including the explosive damage that this thing does on top of that. This is a very powerful weapon. I was calling this like a 500 kg in your pocket, but you guys were right and said it's more like a precision strike in your pocket. This thing is just very powerful. If you pair it with like a supply backpack, that ammo nerf not going to hurt you too much, but you're just going to be using your ammo backpack to really reload your secondary, which, you know, that is a play style. I feel like this thing has to go into A tier just for so much power. It can do so many things. And yeah, it's more like you have to be very almost like careful about when you use it, or conservative. Now, the ease of use for this weapon is also maybe something you would question, because you have to know how the projectile is going to arc to kind of get the full effect of how this secondary is going to perform. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, I feel like once you get past that little bit of a learning curve, the ultimatum it's fantastic. I would probably almost rank it above the crisper. It really, between these two, or I guess some of these, it really depends on what your kit is. As far as, do I have a medium penetration weapon that can handle light chaff like really easily, and so that way it frees up your secondary to do whatever you want, and then you bring the ultimatum. That could be really, really powerful. But if you have a primary weapon that maybe needs a little bit of help with chaff, then obviously the crisper is going to be your way to go. But for me personally, I think I am going to put the ultimatum. No, I'll keep it up. I'm going to keep the ultimatum here, because that ammo capacity, you have to do a lot of things, I would say, to get over that hurdle. So I'm going to keep it there for now. Now, moving on to the loyalist. This is probably, I don't want to say the most controversial, but a lot of people, you either love this gun or you hate this gun. I follow in the category of, I love this gun. I'm a huge fan of the Purifier, and this is like having a Purifier secondary. Now, this is going straight into A tier. And another big thing about the loyalist is the fact that you can treat this secondary like it's your primary weapon. I think it has the ammo economy. I think it has the power to basically where you never need to take out your primary weapon. You can just use this. Now, some people don't like the play style, and that's because of the charge up, and then the fact that if something's close to you and you shoot it, this thing can kill you. So I understand those reasons, but I really like the Purifier. So obviously the loyalist, I fucking love this thing too. So it is definitely sticking in A tier. Now, when it comes to my S tier pick, I think you gotta give it to the grenade pistol. It's just too versatile. It's too good. It does too many things really well that you just can't ignore how good it is. So looking over my list one last time, am I happy with this? I would say, yeah, I think this is pretty solid. But yeah, like I said, this is probably my last time where I'm talking about weapons or stratagems or stuff like that in broad strokes. Again, they're going to be more faction focused later on, because I want to keep these videos not over an hour long. Anyways, Helldivers, let me know how you would rank these secondary weapons. Obviously, we're not going to all agree on everything, but it's kind of good to just have discussions and healthy conversations, because, you know, we're just playing a fun game here. Anyways, until next time, Helldivers, peace and take care.